Good morning, Metalheads Unit. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. And today we are looking at the latest album from As I Lay Dying, entitled Shaped by Fire. Okay, so let's just address the elephant in the room right away. This is As I Lay Dying's first album in nearly 7 years, and as such is also their first album since Tim Lambesis was arrested for soliciting someone to murder his wife. In 2013, Tim was arrested for trying to hire a hitman to murder his wife in her sleep. Unbeknownst to him, that hitman turned out to be an undercover cop. He initially pled not guilty, but in February 2014 changed his plea to guilty and was thus sentenced to 6 years in state prison. Although he was eventually released early on parole 2.5 years later on December 17th, 2016. I remember when this whole story broke too. I remember many major music publications, not just within metal, were talking about this story, talking about Tim, talking about everything that had happened in the case. And this was unfortunately my exposure to As I Lay Dying, and as such I was hesitant to really look at any of their music. To the band's credit, they were pretty successful and even influential within the world of American metalcore, but those kind of things don't really matter anymore when these kinds of stories and cases are being brought up against your lead singer. I think it's safe to say that we all thought that that was the end of As I Lay Dying, which was probably for the best because A, Tim's in prison and he's clearly got shit to work through, and B, the rest of the guys, clearly shaken by As I Lay Dying and wanting to let off some steam, immediately kickstarted a new project called Woven War. For all these reasons, I wasn't really sure how to feel when the band announced that they were going to be putting out a new album this year with Tim back on vocals. Now, don't get me wrong, to an extent, it is a good thing that this is happening, even if just so that these guys can rebuild those relationships and get their shit back together. But what concerns me is not only do we have to deal with Tim's baggage, but the band now with this baggage has to find a way to exist in a post-Me Too world, and have to exist in an environment where female representation is at an all-time high for hard rock, heavy metal, and extreme music. And women are speaking out against issues that very much detail to the baggage that Tim carries. Bands such as Venom Prison, Ithaca, Svalbard, for fuck's sakes, Lingua Ignota. Like, it's very difficult for me to picture a scenario where As I Lay Dying doesn't have trouble living in this environment. Hell, I wouldn't blame any of you whatsoever if you decided that you were just going to write off this band. You were just going to say, screw it, I don't want to support this. Even if he seems genuine. Even if he has learned his lesson. I don't feel comfortable supporting this. And I don't blame you, because this is still inherently fucked up. I mean, I certainly almost did. I didn't really want to talk much about this album at first, if we're being honest. But unfortunately, I'm a man who believes in second chances. So, in the sake of fairness, I do have to give Tim that second chance. And as such, I do have to give this album a genuinely fair shot. And that's exactly what I did. And therefore, I feel confident enough now to report to you that while this album, Shaped by Fire, no means a game changer in the world of American metalcore, it is still a competent, well-produced, well-performed, passionately performed, even for that matter, record that gives us everything that I think people want and expect from As I Lay Dying, and showcases a genuinely honest and humble side of Tim that we definitely haven't seen before. Tim is undeniably the star of this whole thing. I mean, the band certainly have lots of really interesting moments across the record. For one, I really enjoy the Swedish death metal flavors found across the album. I also like hearing the band experiment with more modern styles. There are some almost periphery-style grooves and guitar work pieces that can be found. But Tim is the star. He is the focus. He takes the forefront of the sound. And he uses this album as an opportunity to express his sincerest regrets, but at the same time, to showcase to us that he understands just how difficult this situation is. You know, he's not screaming or begging for forgiveness or pleading. He's coming out here and saying, I fucked up. I made a mistake. That's on me. I think I have changed. If you feel different, if you don't want to support me, I don't blame you. I won't hold it against you. I totally understand. I know what you're thinking, Robert, there's no way he's saying all this on this record, but he really is, and it's evident in the lyrics for a good majority of these songs. Take, for instance, title track Shaped by Fire, where he says, we are reborn through pain. Though I too have endured fire, I wasn't wise enough to ignite the flame myself, but carried enough fuel for a flicker to excel. Or in the track Blinded, where he kind of immediately starts to dig into the complicated emotions that fueled him years ago to make those decisions. Through lyrics such as losing yourself, feeling too powerless to change, stuck and unable to escape, incapable to see another way. Interestingly, he attempts to extend an olive branch to people that he may have wronged in the past, but at the same time acknowledges that maybe people don't change and maybe this is something he just has to live with. With lyrics such as, have you ever been blinded by the pain, losing yourself inside the heartache? And does that mean we cannot change, or will we always be seen that way? Sure, these lyrics and many more across the record are not exactly the most intuitive or creative lyrics within the metalcore chub genre. In fact, all things considered, it's kind of cliche. But because we know what Tim's been going through, because we know what's happened and what he's done, we kind of understand automatically what he's going through here. It does feel very genuine. And it's emboldened by a fantastic vocal performance. Gotta say, he is dominating not just the fucking pen, but the motherfucking microphone on this thing. Now, unfortunately, musically is where this album shows a lot less ambition and a lot less power, which isn't to say it's incompetent, it isn't, but it is pretty generic and even predictable in its lowest moments. I mean, I gotta be honest, I almost clocked out of this thing entirely after track number 4, because by this point I was predicting what was going to happen next in the song, and I was pretty much always right. I don't really picture this being a big problem for a lot of people. Maybe with that in mind, I do have to chalk it up to a bit of personal bias. This, at the end of the day, isn't my cup of tea at all. But even so, I do genuinely think that maybe the band, without going into super weird territory, could have sharpened their tools a little bit. They could have done some funkier and more progressive material that could have bolstered the lyrics and made this a much more impressive and memorable record. It's very similar to the last Architects record with that in mind, where it has this really strong and genuine emotional core, but unfortunately everything else just doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't evolve, it doesn't introduce anything new or exciting or fun. With that in mind, I'm going to give this a really unenthusiastic 3 out of 5. We're bordering on a 2.5 out of 5. The only thing that prevents me from doing so are the lyrics and the vocals from Tim, who really does sound fucking genuine here. I mean, if we're to judge who he is as a man now, based on how he's presenting himself, based on how he's tackling things head on this record, then I feel comfortable saying that he has changed. Now, only time will tell if that truly is the case, but consider this. Would As I Lay Dying have reconvened if they themselves weren't comfortable with where Tim is? Would Nuclear Blast Record have signed such a controversial band? Were they not comfortable with where Tim is? Unfortunately, as far as the music is concerned, unless they step it up, I won't be coming out back for the next album, because I waited 7 years for what was ultimately a really bland, unseasoned metalcore record that was sprinkled with some really powerful notes and performances, but that's nothing more than garnish to a pretty bland meal. So 3 out of 5, it's fine. It's by no means offensive or annoying or incompetent. I just don't think that a single performance, as good and as genuine as it is, saves this record from being pretty forgettable, for me at least. Maybe the As I Lay Dying fanbase will feel differently, and honestly, more power to you if that's how you feel. But for me, this record just doesn't pack a lot, other than showing us that, they've got their shit together. Don't blame you if you're not willing to support this whatsoever, but in the sake of fairness, do give this a second chance, because I do think everyone deserves that second chance. 3 out of 5, not an enthusiastic one, but a 3 out of 5 nonetheless. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? Thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.